I have been asked to give a presentation on whether population growth in regional SA is really possible. So, in order to understand the answer to the question, we have to look a little bit about why people and businesses move. And in essence, they move because the value of another place is perceived to be higher than the value of the present place. And the value here comes in three flavors. There is what the location can do for me, normally known as instrumental value, what the value is to the location in its own right, known as intrinsic value, and what value is assigned by the region by the people and businesses around me, known as extrinsic value. And of course, every region is trying to put these different things together in such a way that they have a higher value offering than other regions. One of the most important things when you're looking to primarily individuals is amenities. And of course, if you have amenities, green areas, free, clean air, lots of business environments around you and so on, you can attract people to that region even if you other things may not be as good, if you can overcompensate on this side. The challenge with regional SA is that it is what is known as a peripheral and isolated region. No matter where you are in it, that's how they are called. And of course, this means that there are limited access to markets, there are limited access to services, there is sparseness of population, it's difficult to get around and to get there, and frequently there is a negative migratory balance. In other words, young people frequently move away. There is, as a consequence, aging. There is low land values that frequently are unpredictable in how they increase or decrease. And on the whole, there is on average a lower education level than in urban areas. And that means that these regions do not really have an enormous potential for endogenous development, but it can be compensated. It can be compensated through different types of networks. And if you're going to go down the route of smart specialization, which is one of the industry policy trajectories that you can use, it basically is focused on building specialized links to specific urban supply and demand aspects. And of course, the closest urban agglomeration to regional South Australia is Adelaide. And it's about finding what the links are. If we then look at the determinants of these things. So if you're going to be successful in smart specialization and smart growth, you need to have access to agglomeration economic benefits, and you measure this by population density. And this is a challenge in regional SA. There has to be some form of industrial specialization that you can build on, and you may well have that. Depending on where you are, you have forestry in the south, you have smelters and iron production and mining in the north and so on. You need to have diversity as well as related growth and other businesses. You need to have people and businesses that sit in the supply chain, to those that are specialized, as well as businesses that has nothing to do with the existing specialization. You need to have all these amenities that we discussed previously. You need to have some form of creative communities that are important, festivals and all kinds of activities that attract people. And you need to have very strong external knowledge links. So you need to have access to higher education and knowledge and business services. You need to have people which are working very hard in challenging domains. And of course, you also need to have infrastructure. You need to have high-speed internet. You need to have linkages between people and so forth. So what type of growth could you expect if you succeed with these things? But basically, there are three types, and you can ask the questions that I have outlined on this slide to understand where this growth is actually happening. The first one is what we can call innovative entrepreneurship, named after Schumpeter. So the question to ask is, are there actors in the region taking risks, searching for opportunities by introducing innovation or constructing their own preconditions for their own business? So do you have really good startup companies that turn out to be really successful? The next domain is what we call institutional entrepreneurships. In other words, are there different players, companies, individuals, working to change the existing thinking patterns? So breaking people out of the traditional way of looking at things. Saying that looking at the region from a different perspective, looking at core activities from a different perspective, and therefore changing how these things are sanctioned. Ensuring that there are some form of expectation that can be delivered on that is different from what the expectation was yesterday. And are they taking risks, and are they searching for opportunities to change the structure that you presently have to make it more conducive for this new type of innovation? And finally, they can have place-based leadership actions. So in other words, are there individuals or organizations that mobilize other individuals and organizations that may have important resources, capabilities or powers, and or coordinating these activities to ensure some regional development or some aspects of it? In other words, are there people that go to companies and say, we would like to have involved in doing this new thing? We would like to produce direct reduced iron. We want to involve the people who produce the magnetite. We want to have the transportation system involved. We want to be involving with the people who do the desalination plants for the water we need to produce the hydrogen, and connecting that to the energy, ensuring that you have energy draw when there is no other energy draw, and that you have a suitable technology base that enables you to produce the direct reduced iron and the associated marketing of it, and the continuous development of the technology, the development of the intellectual property, all the associated supply chains, and the associated players that enable it to go to market. As an example, is this actually happening in those places where the opportunity resides? So what you're trying to do is to balance these three types of entrepreneurship to get an economic growth in the region. And of course, as we said before, peripheral regions lack frequently sufficient actors. They lack frequently support organization, and they also lack the dynamics that contribute to companies' ability to innovate and absorb technological change. And given that there is a lower density of companies, their interaction becomes less frequent, and therefore they are normally not as good as taking in new technology and new knowledge and putting it to use, known as the absorptive capacity. And the way to get around this is to ensure that you have relationships as an organization, broad and wide, that helps you absorb new knowledge. Firstly, get you aware that it exists. Secondly, understand what it is and what it can do for you. And thirdly, getting help in actually in practice implementing. And that means that collaboration among firms is a really fundamental basis for ensuring that you have economic growth. If companies do not work together, even if they are in somewhat competing, then economic growth is very difficult to generate from a business perspective. The challenge is that if you succeed, then these very successful companies tend to increasingly draw on services that are non-local, because they can't find what they need locally, and their external expansion is more likely to happen elsewhere. In other words, there is not sufficiently large market locally. So as they draw on non-local services, and as they start to sell primarily to non-local location, they over time tend to move. It is not that common that these companies, as they are successful, stay in the region. They tend to leave the region. So that is an additional challenge. So to overcome that, it might be possible to build a relationship with and attract global firms. But in order to do that, you really have to have a long-term plan, and it has to be consistent over a pretty substantial number of years. So the first one is to draw on government, firms, universities to find out who in the world is it that have the key knowledge that you're looking for, and establish some robust foundation for continued collaboration with those. So where is the R&D happening in the world on the university level and on the industry level, both on suppliers and users, on, for example, direct reduced iron? And do you have relationships with them? And are you able then to get up suitable relationship with universities locally and overseas, or other research and development organizations, CSROs of this world, and attract them to this and have the relationships over time that are actually used by companies and paid for, because money is important in this? And are you then able to attract these companies in the world who are leaders in this domain, be the direct reduced iron as an example, or whatever it may be, into this area? And what can you offer them in order to have a relationship with them? And how can you then ensure that you have sufficient pool of labor, so you have career path for individual, you have work opportunities for individual, and that companies have access to the labor that they need if they're going to grow these businesses. All in all, this is a difficult task. It is not impossible, but it is very difficult. It has been successful in some locations around the world, not in all. There are more that have failed than that have succeeded, but there are locations that have succeeded by having a consistent long-term path, building on local strength, primarily in the raw material or other aspects area, to establish associated industries and the economic growth that come with it. It is not easy, it is difficult, but it can be done. With that, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much.